Hello good people of YouTube and welcome to my channel. This is a video I had wanted to do a while ago, but life gets in the way. I've had a hectic week. I have spent time building and finishing off some of these kitbashed models, and so the thing I wanted to do today was basically just do a brief run through of everything I've done so far, where I'm at with the kit bashing, with the unit building, and my ideas as the army starts to take shape. So the first unit we'll return to is the men at arms. Now I've built another 30 or something models since the last time I featured any of these. I do still have 2 command sprues that I haven't touched yet, because at the moment, having spent some time reading through the rules, listening to other people's YouTube videos on meta and building a Bretonnian army, I'm gravitating towards this idea of doing blocks of men at arms that are 7 miniatures wide and 7 ranks deep. So 7 by 7 blocks, which would give you 49 miniatures, 48 if you remove one and insert some kind of character into that, like a paladin or a sergeant at arms or something. So there's some scope there to develop these still further. Probably half of these figures are built straight from the box. You can't really see them now because I've got the shields glued to the front of the figures. I know a lot of people, when they get to the painting stage, they actually leave the shields off and paint them separately because they're big and they obscure a lot of the mini. My approach is a bit more old school. Spray it black, use the shadows to cut down the work that you have to do. If the back of the shield is in shadow, if you can't see the top of the arm, if most of the face is hidden, then don't sweat it, you know, just leave it in shadow, leave the colors on it dark. You're not going to notice when they're all ranked up like this whether or not a Bretonnian man at arms has got his fingernails painted behind his shield. So for me, it's not something that I worry about. But then my style of painting is a bit more grimdark and grungy, as I've probably mentioned before. So I'll just pick out a few models from this unit which aren't straight from the box. This one here has a head swap, and you'll see in previous videos that I've been using Oathmark light infantry, human light infantry, and Oathmark human infantry for some of my kit bashing and conversions, along with a whole host of FireForge Deus Vult medieval miniatures. So we've got medieval archers, foot sergeants. I will be using the mounted sergeants and the sergeant at arms to try and create a couple of yeoman cavalry units for my Bretonnian army. I've also got some halberds left over, the arm here which you glue on at the elbow. I've got quite a few of those left over. I might do a bit more kit bashing on this unit to get some foot sergeants carrying Bretonnian halberds and do some Bretonnian head swaps and stuff to fill out the unit. But I am looking at using unit fillers, which is why that ogre is in the middle there. I've got a couple of ogres to hand that I want to use. These are figures that I've sculpted myself. Again, I've mentioned them in a previous video, so I won't labour the point, but these are available from the Battleforge, as are some of the other miniatures that I'm using of my own sculpts. So this guy's in resin. Molds were made for metal versions as well. So, and the Battleforge miniatures are available from the Battleforge website. which is owned and managed now by Ainsty Castings. So just in case anyone has not seen my previous videos and was wondering what that was, that's the reason why I've got some of these extra minis in there, because I'm using some of my stuff as unit fillers. So just have a look at a few more of these men-at-arms. That one looks pretty vanilla to me. That's straight out the box. And as I said, I've kind of mixed these around now. There are some heads which may have come from the Northman folk rabble, which is another FireForge box of miniatures for their Forgotten Worlds. And I've just really gone to town. So over half of these Bretonnian models, I think that's a folk rabble one there with the little hood on and the seam down the middle. So over half of these models have been kitbashed using heads from other boxes from elsewhere, including some of the FireForge foot sergeants, which needed a little bit of green stuff, which you can probably just see there, to create a bit of a neck. So the heads would sit okay. As I said, I'm not going to labour for too long on these because I've featured them in previous videos, so please do check those out. But those are my two units of men-at-arms, which I'm looking to build up into 7x7 blocks. So we'll go from those across to the medieval Bretonnian peasant bowmen. There's a bit more going on here. I've got some engineers at the front there, which I'm also looking at using as a potential crew for my trebuchet, which I've been working on since the last video, but I'll come to those in a minute. What I want to show you here is just a little bit of kit bashing that I've done. Again, same applies. A third of these archers are built straight from the box. Bretonnian bodies, Bretonnian heads. I took the time with things like the Grail monks that were in all the units to try and give them, you know, sort of realistic, and I don't know if you can see that one in there, it's too close, I'll pull him out. Just kind of, you know, realistic and believable poses. I think some of the studio assembly of the miniatures on the box art is a bit weird in places, so I've worked hard to create these realistic and believable poses, which again I featured in my previous videos. And then I've taken the time, that is a FireForge head, either a medieval archer's head or a foot sergeant's head. I think they're very similar in both of those boxes. So I've plundered the wonderful sprues that FireForge do, and again I've featured this guy before, but there's lots and lots of stuff I've done, and you'll get to see more of these as and when I paint them, but I just want to draw your attention to this guy here. That's a nice Oathmark head, I believe. And another one which I definitely do know is Oathmark is this guy here with his big ears and his bristling tash. That is one of my favourites. I'm looking forward to painting him up because I just think he adds heaps of character. And those are from the human infantry, which I've mentioned before. So some really nice bits of kit bashing done. What I just want to kind of focus on now are the command. I've just seen this guy which distracted me. This is an Oathmark light infantry archer. Again, I've featured him in a previous video, and I've built him up to kind of look like perhaps a high elf who may have temporarily joined the ranks of a Bretonnian army. Again, it's that high fantasy sort of Brothers Grimm fairy tale kind of stuff. So with that in mind, most of the command have been built straight out of the box, but I am looking at head swaps. This guy here has a helmet from the Foot Knights of the Realm on Foot. Again, they featured in a previous video, that box. I've built 2 units, and we'll look at those in a minute. But they are quite challenging miniatures to build, those Foot Knights. They are sort of single pose, multi-part plastics, and things like the heads and the helmets. Some of them come in 3 parts, where you've got a left side and a right side to the helmet, and then a head or a face to glue on. So the Foot Knights are quite a laborious challenge, but I had some bits left over, and what I've done is just damaged the helmet, hacked off some of the antlers along the top, and then instead of gluing in a rather well presented noble knight's face, I've sliced the face very carefully off a Bretonnian archer. So you've got this jowly, grumpy, fierce looking, moody standard bearer, and that is literally the head, the face, and possibly the neck as well. I might have just clipped the back of the head off and shaved it right down so it would slot into that hole. And I've done the same. So that's a standard bearer on one of those. I've done the same for a champion in another unit of peasant bowmen. This one I gave a halberd and a shield because I just wanted to mix it up a bit. I mean, he could end up in one of those units as a hero or a champion or whatever, but same applies. Helmet was in 2 parts, the face was separate, so I stuck a Bretonnian archer's face in there instead, to give this the look of this kind of, it's, you know, they found the helmet on the battlefield or wherever, they picked it up and they've repurposed it, which I know went on a lot in historical medieval times anyway. So I'm just reflecting that although this is a fantasy army, I'm kind of repurposing history and blending it with some fantasy to create the look I'm after. The other thing I wanted to show you were the Grail monks, which I've been building for every unit. You can see one there in the men-at-arms. That's the kind of very vanilla sort. Here, what I've done is see if we look at the back of this one from the men-at-arms, you can see across the back of the habit where there's this shoulder piece, I don't know what that's called, but there's a hood there which is obviously not being worn, so it's just draped across the back of the neck. Now I wanted to make some Grail monks using different heads, and I found a rather nice hooded head in the Oathmark human infantry, but of course with the hood up, then it doesn't work that it's also resting on the back of the neck. So I cleaned that off with a scalpel, and the glossy shine you can see on the plastic there, that is simply plastic glue. Having cleaned it off and shaved it, what I found is that if you just apply a very thin layer of plastic glue to a piece of plastic that you've cut, and just let it dry naturally, don't touch it obviously, otherwise you'll end up with fingerprints and bits of fluff and God knows what else getting tangled up in it. But if you're careful, you clean off the model and you apply a little bit of plastic glue to a surface that you've cut, it will develop this, it kind of melts the surface and just and gives it a nice fresh new look. If you can see there's the detachment scar on the side of that barrel. Now that's smooth, very smooth, and it doesn't matter. But just as an example, if I were to put a tiny drop of plastic glue over that and just leave it to do its thing, the white sort of stress mark that you can see in the plastic there would disappear, and you wouldn't know that there'd ever been a different surface there. So that's what I've done with a couple of the monks. So that's one. I've got another one here. Again, I've swapped the heads for hooded heads. I think they look really cool, still look very monk-like. And again, I've just, where I've cleaned off the hood that was lying across the back of the shoulders, I've just applied a little bit of plastic glue and let it settle and dry and do its thing. So that now looks like a pristine surface that will be ready to prime and paint. It's just a handy little tip if you're working with plastic. And I do mean a small amount, you know, you don't want it running everywhere, but just a little dab of glue over a surface that you've been hacking away at will help create a finish that looks undamaged and pristine. So these are my archers. They're pretty much, you know, straightforward build, just with head swaps wherever I could do that. And again, I've got some of my old miniatures, my old halflings and things that I'm adding to these units. There are some gaps you'll notice at the back. That's because I'm planning to go for units of 24 archers with some unit fillers. So my reckoning is I either need to leave 2 or 4 bases sort of unmade at this stage, so that I can put various unit fillers in there. So that's where I am at with those. They may end up being bigger units once I start building the unit fillers, and that will be a separate video. Here is just a reminder of the Bretonnian Squires that I created. Now, I think when I first, as I've said before, when I first bought a Bretonnian army, this unit was probably referred to as huntsmen. They now call them Squires. So that is what that unit is, even though, as someone very kindly pointed out, in historical terms, something between a peasant and a noble is a yeoman. And this sort of Robin Hood, Bertrand, who is effectively Robin Hood, in history he's referred to as a yeoman. So that was an interesting fact. But of course, in Warhammer, the yeomen are the mounted sergeants at arms. I just thought that was an interesting thing to point out. So that's my unit of Squires with some of my halfling huntsmen in them, which are the small metal dudes there. Again, we'll have a closer look at all of that in later videos, but that's just to get the kind of the feel for the basic fodder, the rank and file troops, the you know, the cheap stuff that most of my army will be built from, as I try to create this medieval feel. Now I'm going to come on quickly to these foot knights. Now, I built 2 units of these. In the last video that I did, I was building these and talking about the kit bashing that I'd done, because I'd given all my knights the two-handed great axe. So they all had two-handed weapons, because I thought that felt more kind of noble and I don't know, regal or whatever. It's a noble's weapon. And then I created, using the foot knights from FireForge and their Deus Vult range, I used the bodies of those foot knights with Bretonnian men-at-arms heads, and I took the shield and sword arms from the Warhammer Knights of the Realm on foot to kitbash these sort of bodyguards, noble retinues, that kind of thing. My thinking behind this, again, stems from the research I've done into historical battles. I mean, I can remember many years ago when I was a young lad, if anyone did a medieval army, you would have a unit of knights, and it would all be knights in shining armor, emblazoned with heraldry. It would basically be the cream of society, massed together into units or battles or whatever they were called. And that probably didn't happen, because every knight went into battle with a retinue, with bodyguards, with men-at-arms around him. So I wanted to reflect that with the work that I'd done on this build here. So I've taken 10 knights, and then I've inserted 8 of the FireForge foot knights, which are the slightly smaller chaps, as retinue or bodyguards. And I think it gives each of the knight models, it gives them a bit more breathing space, makes the unit look impressive, but it also means out of a box of 20 very expensive Knights of the Realm on foot, I can get 2 units of 18 just by padding them out with less expensive models and doing some kit bashing and conversions. So this is the standard bearer for one of the units that I've created. I didn't want to duplicate this because of course you get 2 of these standards, these icons, whatever you want to call them. You get 2 of those in every box of 20 knights, so you can do 2 units of 10. But I didn't want to create 2 units with pretty much identical command. There's not a lot of flexibility with the Games Workshop Bretonnian knights. The arms and the poses of those arms that they only fit specific bodies, so you can't do these massive arm swaps. So I created, with the exception maybe of giving him an axe or a sword arm, because that's easy. There's not much scope for kit bashing with these as they come in the box. So anyway, this was my first build. This was a musician, built straight out the box, more or less following the instructions. And as I said, I then added in these extra kind of retinue to bulk out that unit. So that was one unit that I did, and then I didn't want to repeat the whole thing again for the second unit because there's already a limit to how many different helmet designs there are, and they're all carrying the same sort of weapons. So what I did here that's significantly different, well, if we take the hero first, I used the head, which looks like it could be a female, and I'm possibly going to sculpt some long hair or braided hair coming out from under that veil at the back of this helmet. Now I think on the box art that head features there on the standard bearer. You can just see it above the musician's cornet or whatever. But I wanted to kind of go for some sort of Joan of Arc type heroine, although we probably call her a hero in this day and age. So anyway, possibly going to sculpt hair flowing down her back and just give her a kind of female warrior look. This is the same body that was used on the previous unit for the standard bearer. Again, there's no real choice there, but I did a head swap and chose a helmet that was also emblazoned with a flag, and I took a flag from one of my surplus command units. I think I had 2 spare from the men-at-arms, which I am going to turn into 2 extra command for the men-at-arms, but I thought I'll do one without a flag or with a different flag. So that is the standard bearer for my second unit of foot knights for the Bretonnian army. And the last thing I did was just kit out one of the FireForge foot knights, just to remind you again. One of those bodies, I kitted them out with an arm holding an axe, a Bretonnian men-at-arms or bowman's head, and the cornet arm. And I mean, that came in a couple of pieces. That was a bit of a pain to build anyway. But I thought I'd make this more of a herald type figure. So instead of having a musician who's a knight, which is what I did in the first unit of 10 that I built before bulking them out to 18, I took the opportunity in this unit to make one of the lesser nobles a herald, which I think adds to the kind of the flavour, the realism and everything else. So that covers all of the foot troops except the battle pilgrims. Now, I'll show you these quickly. I'll do a deeper dive into these in a later video. I did show one off in a previous video where I'd tested the conversion, and that was this one, because I'd cut little nicks into the sword to make it look damaged. I put a shield on from the human light infantry. The body and the arms are from the human infantry, both of which are Oathmark, from the Oathmark range, and the head is a Bretonnian peasant archer's head. And I did some head swaps, as I mentioned, on the archers, the sort of Grail monk in some of the bowmen units, and that was so that I could use the same heads, the spare heads, on these Oathmark human infantry bodies to create a unit that sort of looks like hardened veterans. You know, they're warrior monks. They're devoted to the cause. So, you know, I just wanted to get across this look that they were a little bit more haggard and, you know, more battle worn than any of the other Bretonnians. So these are my battle pilgrims. And as I said, I'll do a kind of deeper dive into these when I get to sort of paint them and model them. But it wouldn't be a complete sort of battle pilgrims unit, if you like, without a Grail Reliquae. And again, I mentioned in a previous video that I was going to look at kitbashing my own Grail Reliquae. Now, I've already opened the box, so this isn't an unboxing, but I will show you what I went with. Again, from my local hobby store. I picked this up for a tenner, I think £9.99 or whatever. This is from WizKids, and it's their Dead Warlord. Now, there were 3 elements to this. I've taken the bottom 2 out, but basically it's from their deep cuts range. So if anyone wants to look at, you know, potentially using this guy here, I'll probably turn into some sort of champion or something for perhaps my Tomb King's army, or maybe my vampire counts, depending on how I feel. But with regards to Tomb Kings, I like the idea that he could have been a crusading knight that ended up in Egypt, in this case, Cavalry. So, you know, it's this idea that he went on crusade and died out there and has been kind of reanimated and resurrected by I can't remember the name of the Tomb King's kind of goddess or whatever, but, you know, it's an idea. Failing that, then it's just a dead knight that's crawled out of the ground for the Vampire Count's army. But anyway, so there's the blister that I bought. I've already taken out the 2 figures from that, so I shall pop that to one side to use later and reveal why I purchased it, because it came with a throne, a stone sort of throne, and this dead warrior in a seated position. And when I saw that, pictures of this on the internet at first, obviously, but when I saw that, I just thought, yeah, that is my Grail Reliquae. But of course, it needs to be carried into battle. And I wasn't going to start kit bashing a load of sort of peasant figures to be carrying some sort of wooden frame or structure. I thought, no, let's keep it simple and plunder the FireForge bits box. So I went back to the box of stuff that I have from all the things I sculpted and cobbled this together. You will notice that I've made a 50 by 75 mil base for my Grail Reliquae by gluing together 3 rescued cavalry bases, because of course a lot of new cavalry for the old world has new base sizes, 60 by 30 or whatever it is. So I have, during the course of building my old world armies been pulling figures off the bases and rebasing them. So I don't like to waste stuff, especially not when GW style slot bases cost as much as they do these days. So that's why that looks like that. That's why it's been reinforced with lots of milliput and green stuff. And that's why I've been using it to sculpt a sort of a track way. But basically, it's a halfling cart with a cart horse. And that's a cart horse that I sculpted when I saw the Skull Pass dwarf pony. I wanted to basically have something similar for my own range, so I kind of sculpted a homage to that without all the dwarf iconography and all the other bits that wouldn't fit outside of a a GW game. But yeah, I liked it. It had a certain appeal and I wanted to echo that, so I sculpted that horse there. The cart, which this one's made of resin because it was a test piece, but again, Battleforge miniatures on sale on the Battleforge website, run by Ainsley Castings. All these are available in metal, and these aren't the wheels that came with the cart when I originally sculpted it. I had Dave at Museum Miniatures. I commissioned him to sculpt some proper looking cart wheels and wagon wheels for me, because if there's one thing Dave does really well, it is stuff like that. And of course, now I've mentioned this before, he sculpts digitally, so his miniatures now and his ranges have just kind of exploded into the stratosphere, so he does some great stuff. But anyway, back in the day before digital sculpting, I got Dave to do those, and I think they're some of my favorite wheels. They're part of the Battleforge range, but I took those and added them to a scruffy old cart that I created. And now, the moment you've been waiting for, I know you'll all be itching there to see what I intend to do. Nice and simple. I'm just going to glue the throne, the battered stone throne with the dead warlord in it, to my rickety cart, and excuse my hand being in the way, and basically pop it into my battle pilgrims unit. So that is pretty much all the foot troops for my kitbashed Bretonnian army, and we're at the half-hour mark, which leaves me 5 or 10 minutes just to talk about the remaining cavalry. I'll quickly bring this one in. This is an old miniature that I've had for ages. Lost the tail. I will probably look at doing a quick video on how you can remedy that. I did buy some more War Games Atlantic horses, and they come with lots of tails, but I don't know if you get spare ones. But if you're not a confident sculptor, you could always glue a plastic tail on from a different horse. If you are a confident sculptor, you could either change the back end of the horse so it looks like the tail is actually underneath the fabric, or you can stick a bit of wire in and sculpt a new tail. I'll probably stick a bit of wire in, sculpt a new tail, and I'll probably do a video on how to do that, because I know it's kind of the next stage up from kit bashing, and not everybody is a confident sculptor or user of green stuff. It can be difficult to work with, and that's why I mix it with milliput. Milliput on its own can be difficult to work with, and that's why I mix it with green stuff. So I will be doing videos on that, but just to show that this will probably be my, I don't know, prophetess or whatever, damsel. I don't know. I'll look at the rules and decide. But again, I'm dragging out my my FireForge. This was actually a Templar knight or a Teutonic knight, but I snipped the gubbins, the wings off the side of the helmet, and painted it up as a feudal knight. And I did that for my book on fantasy figure painting, which is still available. If you want to go and get that, this knight is featured in that book. I talk about painting yellow. I talk about painting checker patterns, and I think I even did a step-by-step for the Bretonnian style fleur-de-lis that I painted on that shield. That was hand painted, that was, and I by no means have a steady hand. I am a messy painter by anybody's standard. So when I sit down and concentrate and try and do something neat, it takes a lot of effort. But, you know, the book's out there, still on sale. If you want to buy it, great. You know, obviously I appreciate that. It doesn't make me a rich man, but but hey, it's full of ideas, and I'm hoping my YouTube channel will just be an extension of those. So that was just to kind of show you the scale of the prophetess against a non-Games Workshop knight. So if you're more heavily into the previous edition of Bretonnians, and you have an army full of metal knights on these horses, then if you want to build on that army, you can't do better than the historical, a lot of historical miniatures that are out there, and I'll be talking about that in other videos, but that's why I've gone for as many FireForge and Wargames Atlantic horses as I have. So moving swiftly on, because I don't want this to drag out for too much longer, I want to have a quick look at the Knights of the Realm. I've got a unit of 6 there, which I built obviously with their helmets. You can see at the back lots of antlers and fancy iconography and heraldry. I then built a further unit with simpler headgear to use as errant knights, but what I might do is mix those 3 at the back, you know, the back rank of 3 on each of those. I might mix them up so that I can play them as 2 units of Knights of the Realm. I might even look at not playing 2 units and having 1 unit of Knights of the Realm in the lance, but with an extra 4 miniatures at the back. But what I did want to just show you, apart from doing the usual kind of, you know, pilfering a sword, using a sword arm there for the hero on that one, and choosing to have a hawk for the hero on the other one. I know some people have gone for the hawk as a musician, but to me the hawk was like a symbol of status, and it certainly isn't a songbird. So I wouldn't choose to have that as a musician. I would choose to have that as the champion or the leader. Then we've got standard bearer, pretty much straight from the box. Again, musician, not wearing a helmet, so that, you know, he can actually blow the trumpet and look like he's blowing the trumpet. So I did some head swaps on the other version there. So the reason I'm showing you these, there's nothing major here that's kitbashed, just a few, you know, kind of thoughtful head swaps in places. But the reason that I'm showing you these is because some of what was left over from building these, I've used in building my Pegasus Knights. So the head on there, for example, I will tidy that back end up a little with a bit of green stuff just to smooth it off, but I didn't need to trim anything away there. I just got it in the place where I wanted it, so it settled and looked good, and then I'll clean that up before I come to painting it. But what I did, because I had some spare, so you get 3 in the big, you know, like army deal that came with the rule book, but I actually had 4, but I only got wings for 2. So I've got another 2 Pegasus Knights, but they've got no wings, and I haven't been able to find any on eBay or anything. So I'm a bit frustrated about that. I do want to pick up some more wings so that I can field. That would mean I could field. I've got 5 there, so that would mean I could field up to 7 of these guys. And because I've got a few spares kicking around, I created a standard bearer using a standard that was left over from some of the Knights of the Realm and so on. And I think I did a head swap on that one as well. You can see a different helmet. I'm not sure. I can't remember, but I know I did pick a few different helmets. But anyway, the last one that I want to sort of linger on is this musician. I made a musician as well. So because you can run your Pegasus Knights with a full command, I decided I would, you know, do some kit bashing that would allow me to do that. Whether or not it's any good in the game, I don't know. But as I said before, I'm not a competitive player, so I don't really sweat it. You know, I like creating a good looking, fun army, and gaming with an army that's fun to game with. So it's not, for me, it's not all about winning. Last two models then. So, right, this one here, which is the, I don't know what they call this. I can't remember if it's a Great Pegasus or a War Pegasus or whatever. But this is the champion that you get in the box. You can also buy him separately, and I think he's about £50, which for me is an eye-watering amount of money to spend on a plastic champion or hero model. Okay, he's big and he dominates the battlefield, and I wanted him, and I'm glad I've got him within the deal that I bought. But when I started building this, looking at the instructions, I thought, do you know what? There's no way I'm going to spend another £100 getting, or it would be 150 quid if you want the battle standard bearer, if you want the paladin, and if you want to be able to field a baron or a duke or whatever. You know, that's like 200 quid's worth of plastic just for those options. So I thought, no. And I sat down and really started to study the build of this. Built the Pegasus, and what I noticed was that when it came, because I thought, well, I can magnetize the rider, but you can't. And I'll explain why. You can't magnetize the rider because his feet have to sit tucked in around a saddle, and the saddleback is a fleur-de-lis that kind of splays out over his garments, his tabard or whatever. So actually you're stuffed. You know, you've got to glue the legs to the actual Pegasus. And I thought, well, I will not be defeated. So then I started looking at elsewhere, at where, you know, I could maybe divide the model. And what I noticed was that the different options come with different weapon arms and a different, like, shield arm. So they give you different reins up to a point. So you get halfway up the reins, and there's a point where you can break. And yes, okay, close up it doesn't look brilliant because there's a gap there and they don't quite match. But you know, it means if you just glue together the torso with the arms and you don't glue the reins onto the body of the Pegasus Knight where the fabric strips come round there, if you don't glue them on there, then you don't have to spend that extra 50 quid to get, you know, another version. So Duke or Baron or whatever, I'm doing this one-handed, so it's not brilliant, but you can see, yeah, okay, there's a slight gap. They don't match perfectly. But from a distance, painted, who's going to know? So that's my tip for building your armies general. The legs, when you glue the legs together, they're actually hollow inside because it's more of the same that you got with the Knights of the Realm. You know, these big plastic knights where they're made up of lots of different parts. The figure is essentially hollow. It's air with a plastic skin around it. So when it comes to building the legs on the Pegasus, there's a big hole there. So I picked a magnet that fitted, mixed up some green stuff, and basically squished it in, let it dry. And then the bottom of the rider's torso is solid, so you will have to be very careful. I picked a slightly smaller magnet, only slightly, maybe a millimeter smaller in diameter, drilled a hole. I had a drill bit that fitted exactly, and you can just see the raised bit that of plastic there around the edge of the magnet that would have been the kind of socket that you would have used to put glue on and stick the torso in. Now, I have tried my best to keep this magnet slightly recessed below the belt. There's a bit of green stuff there that I need to clean off. I'll do that later, but so that when you, and I've done the same there, so even though even though I've drilled and trimmed away, I've tried to set the magnet in recess slightly so they never actually touch. And that's the key to a lot of this magnetizing. You can get the magnets in, but try and make it so they never actually touch. They're attracted to each other. They hold the model in place, but if they're never actually touching, you often get a better grip because it's the plastic being pulled, the plastic joints, the plastic sections being pulled together that keeps the model. And that was something I learned from building Tyranids, because if you get a smooth joint on an arm, the arm just drops, it just sinks down to the floor, it just sags. Whereas if you've got some plastic around the edge and the magnets aren't actually touching, they're just constantly pulling to get closer, and you get a really nice tight fit. So that's what I've done with my Bretonnian Duke or Baron. I can have either. So that was the real kind of conversion on that one, and all I had to do was just not glue the reins to the model where they say to, because here on this one in particular it comes across the front of the body, and you just put a dab of glue on there and a dab of glue on there and stick it to the reins on the Pegasus, and then you're committed to that choice. So if you don't do that bit, and instead you stick it to the hand behind the shield, but don't link it up to the steed, then there you go. You can have a choice. So that means now I can come on to the final part. I've touched on these before. I'm actually looking at these guys, using these guys as non-combatant, models on the battlefield, maybe as an objective or something. So I've done engineers there. At the moment they're serving as my trebuchet crew, but another thing that I'm looking at here is these are from Renedra. They are gabions. You can see on that picture there, it's not very clear because of the cellophane, but they're good for medieval warfare, English Civil War, American Civil War, Napoleonic War. You could probably get away with featuring them on a battlefield right up until perhaps the very early days of the First World War. Who knows? But they do cover as defences and so on a very broad section of history. So I want to do some bits and pieces, maybe unit fillers, maybe some terrain that's kind of Bretonnian centric. So that's why I'm showing you these. I'll do a separate video on these, but that was only £6 for 2 sprues. Not sure how many gabions they make, but I'm looking forward to building that. So anyway, that's why I've got these sort of engineers. And again, I featured these before. They are the, can't find them now, folk rabble. With Bretonnian men-at-arms or archers' heads. And so the folk rabble, they come in these poses, they come with arms like pickaxes, buckets, they come with torches, axes, all the things that engineers would need on a medieval battlefield. There's even a bucket there. So I have built these, and I've done that guy there with a dog from my Dead Man's Hand leftovers. So I've done some videos on Dead Man's Hand. It's all Old West sort of cowboys and lawmen and outlaws and desperados, a skirmish game where you have a faction or a gang of 7. Check out those videos if that's something that would interest you, because I do look at converting and kit bashing and creating scenery and terrain. So I'll be doing more of that. But these guys at the moment are my proxy trebuchet crew. So to finish up with in the next couple of minutes, and thank you very much for sticking it out if you're still with me. This is the trebuchet. Again, I featured this in an earlier video. I got it from my local gaming store. It is actually produced by Iron Gate Scenics. And it was a 3D print, printed in parts, assembled. Everything was loose and wobbly. There was a lot of slack in all of this. The trebuchet catapult arm moved, so you could position it how you wanted to, which I thought was a good thing. And originally I was thinking, oh yeah, I'll buy a few of these and I won't base them up, and I'll just drop them into my Bretonnian army, and then when I'm perhaps doing Middle Earth battle and defending Minas Tirith or Gondor or whatever, I can use it as a Gondorian trebuchet. But then I thought no, because once I started building this and deciding how I wanted it to look and kind of feel. I wanted to get some Bretonnian sort of shields and heraldry and the emblems on there. So I've used all that from bits that were left over from not putting shoulder pads on these guys. I've got one there, I think, where I did, just to show you. I don't mind the odd shield maybe on a standard bearer or a champion, but when you put these shields on the arms of all the Bretonnian knights, it's just not an aesthetic that pleases me. I don't like the look of that. So I've got loads of these spare, so I've been using them to embellish this trebuchet. And of course, when I glued it onto the 60 by 100 base that it sits on, the actual arms were sticking out over the edge. So I've sculpted some boulders very roughly at this stage. They're dry now, so I can hack away at those with a scalpel blade. I can sort of sharpen off some of the edges, and I will be putting tufts and gravel and so on. I wanted to create the impression that the trebuchet has been erected on a piece of meadow that my engineers have had to level out. So that's why I went with all that. And I have sculpted as well a boulder in the middle that hopefully is narrow enough to pass through that gap, which isn't actually historically accurate there, the positioning of that. But I've done a sling, and I've sculpted some stitching in it, and there's a rock in the middle. So that's pretty much ready to paint. Prime and everything. Just a quick word about the ropes. I made the ropes out of twisted wire. That's normal garden wire, and again I will do a separate video on this because you can take a long piece of garden wire, fold it over, you can clamp it into an old-fashioned twist drill, the big ones that they used to use before power drills came into being. So it's a handheld drill, not the little things that we pin our miniatures with, but a big thing that a carpenter would have used. I've got one or two of those kicking around. One that was my granddad's. I just clamp the ends of 2 bits of wire in that, fold it around a door handle or a chair leg, pick some furniture that you're not going to damage, or that doesn't mean anything to anyone if that's what you're going to do. And you just twist and twist slowly, and it gets you a very straight, very tight, very even looking bit of twisted metal that works really well as rope at 28mm. Probably would at 15 if you use thinner wire. But anyway, I have then used some green stuff to fashion the extra bits of rope that you couldn't make out of wire, including the rope wound around there. I've gone for that kind of chunky look that you get on all the sort of old world orc and goblin stuff. You get it on the giants, the marauder giant with his barrel. I've gone for that kind of chunky big knots and so on. So that's the vibe I went for there, which is another reason for not using this in Middle Earth gaming. But that is my trebuchet now, glued in place. And I did do a bit of research on the mechanisms because this is something that's not very clear. And so just to let you know there, that rope there that goes to the the winch, the winding handles, that is the safety mechanism. That's the bit that obviously pulls the trebuchet arm down towards the ground, which lifts the counterweight and basically primes the trebuchet. Now, that actually has like a half hook on it. And I do need to put another bit of rope in here, which can be pulled by someone who's operating the firing mechanism, because you would pull that, the rope, the half hook, if you like, would slip out of the anchor point there and release the trebuchet. Now, the trebuchet has 2 bits of rope that are then connected to the sling, and they both run parallel to each other. One is permanently attached, which you can see at the back there, going through the whole of the trebuchet arm. The other is on a little metal pin that has been angled so that when the trebuchet arm reaches the upright position, that will slip off. And or it goes just beyond that will slip off. There comes a point where the centrifugal force of the swing causes that to release, and that's how you get your stone out. I just wanted to model something that looked like it would work. That's why I did the research and went into that level of detail. You know, there are videos out there that cover the whole mechanics and physics of the whole thing. I just wanted to get the ropes right. So if that's been helpful, then great, because I think this Iron Industries trebuchet makes a really good proxy for anything that Games Workshop have to offer. And that, okay, I've had to do some extra modelling on it and add shields and so on, but the trebuchet itself was only £16. So if you're spending sort of, you know, 20 quid on a box of soldiers, £16 on a trebuchet, you make the crew, you make the trebuchet, you've still got some soldiers left over for other kit bashing, your quid's in. So there, that's it. It has gone on a little bit longer than I wanted, but it's not as long as yesterday's attempt. So before I switch off and upload this to YouTube, I just wanted to say thanks very much for everyone who has liked my previous videos, who has subscribed to my channel. Literally in a month, I've gone from having like 10 subscribers to nearly 500 subscribers. So I'm really grateful to you guys for that. It really does make a difference. Please smash that like button as well, because that helps all those horrible algorithms that bury you on all these social media platforms. It really does help those algorithms realize that actually people might want to see the videos that I'm making. So I'm really grateful. I do appreciate it. Thanks ever so much for sticking with me for this long. Before I sign off, I just want to add that very quickly, I forgot to tell you, these bases here are from Green Stuff World. These are the spare bases that I've used for the new Pegasus Knights. They are 40 by 60. The original models that I had were on, I think, 40 by 40 or 50 by 50 bases. I think it was 40 by 40. So I had to go out and buy a pack of these. So Green Stuff World do bases now in plastic that are the right size for some of these old world changes. And the other thing, just to finish up on, which is all going a bit haywire at this end as I try to grab everything, I put in a recent order for Claymore castings. I did that last week, just before the weekend, I think, and these arrived yesterday. So it's just a small order that I placed, and I did pay for these. I haven't had any freebies here to promote Claymore, but it's just to let you know that in my next video, I will be looking at some of these like medieval archers that they do, and knights. I bought a couple of knights, and I bought some horse archers, which of course dismount before they fire, but that's what all these are. I bought packs of horse archers. So you've got some holding horses, you've got some firing their weapons. Now, you will know, if you've seen my other videos, that I'm into Agincourt, I'm into the Wars of the Roses, 100 Years Wars. I've got Perry miniatures. I've been using the FireForge medieval miniatures to create Crusader armies and all sorts. I'm looking at gaming with Nevermind the Billhooks and Hail Caesar, not just doing stuff on the old world. But obviously the Bretonnian army is where I blend all this together, my interest in medieval historical stuff with fantasy. So my next video, I will be reviewing these. I'll be doing some scale comparisons, the way that I have in my other videos. I will be showing you, you know, kind of eyeball to eyeball, what the horses look like against Perry miniatures, against Victrix, against the FireForge stuff, maybe even against some Wargames Foundry or ex-Citadel historical ranges. If I can get my hands on some, I do have a collection of old bits and pieces. So I just wanted to show you that to let you know what will be coming next. There will be more work happening on the Bretonnian army. There will be some reviews of some historical stuff. I will also be looking at historical armies and how to add fantasy miniatures to those to be able to fight a sort of a fantasy battle. That's all to come. As I said, thanks very much for sticking with me. Take care. Please smash that like button. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a comment if there's anything that you think I've missed, or there's any additional information you want to add, things that I've said, any hints and tips that you guys have for modeling, kit bashing, whatever. Yeah, let's just spread the love and enjoy. Thanks a lot. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.